think that the 300-hour training mandate has made a difference in teacher preparation in Florida?
Well, again, I think you have to look at what existed before. What existed before is, Peter Roos could have taught these kids. I know nothing about teaching kids. I go to a courtroom and say you're not doing what's right. But it would be a disaster if I were in a classroom trying to teach these kids. That was the state of Florida before the 300 hours. Was the 300 hours a perfect solution? What we had, as I said, our situation was that we were trying to set into motion a new order of things here that required that there be trained teachers to deliver a program for these kids. And they didn't exist because it wasn't required. There were, I think, it's a guess, but a pretty educated guess, I think. My guess is there were probably about 40 or 50 people who had ESOL master's degrees in the state, and we had 100,000 limited English proficient kids that needed to be served in schools, and most of those people with master's degrees were in universities and weren't about ready to leave those universities to teach a third grade class in Hillsborough County. So what we did is we created these sort of a dual track for kids, dual track for teachers getting the training. One was the track that was essentially already there, and that was the 5 courses, graduate courses that made you an ESOL specialist. And I gather usually you came out with a master's degree. That was one way of taking those 5 courses, or the alternative was in-service training, and clearly we had to do in-service training. We couldn't wait around for the universities to crank out, this pool of teachers. Otherwise, we in fact wouldn't be holding this conversation today, 12 years later, because there still wouldn't be enough teachers. Stories, of people sleeping through these, of people being hostile to them. One time, I don't know if it's still true, M.A.s was known as make every teacher angry, because of the 300 hours. We're not a perfect solution, but in an imperfect world, we couldn't think of anything any better. The 300 hours, incidentally, basically comes from the number of clock hours, an estimate of the number of clock hours that are necessary to take the five courses, which were what the state of Florida said you needed to be an ESOL specialist. So it wasn't something that the lawyers dreamed up. It wasn't, let's try to make it as painful as possible, not 100, not 200, let's do 300 because that'll be more painful. It was basically piggybacking on the state's own standards for determining how you became, or what you needed to become an ESOL specialist.